I still remember that evening vividly. A night in October, right after the rain had stopped. The air was chilly and damp, as if foreshadowing something about to break. My parents' house in suburban Portland was filled with laughter, the smell of grilled meat and pumpkin pie spreading through the dining room. Everyone was there, nearly 20 relatives from both sides of the family, gathered around a long table with a red tablecloth, raising glasses to celebrate my father's 65th birthday. I was sitting next to my husband, Marcus, the man I'd spent the past 8 years with. Across the table was my younger sister, Kelly, 3 years my junior, who had dropped out of college and, after years bouncing between Arizona and California, had finally moved back to Oregon to be near family. While I was joking with Aunt Linda about the dessert, Marcus gently tapped his spoon against his wine glass. The sharp clink cut through the noise, and everyone fell silent. He stood up, straightened his collar like he was about to give an important speech. "I need a moment of your time," Marcus began, his voice low and slightly shaky. "There's something I think it's time I shared." I tilted my head to look at him. My heartbeat stayed steady, my face expressionless. Because I had known this for a while, I just wanted to see how long they would keep up the act. Marcus glanced at Kelly, briefly, but I caught it. "Emma and I," he paused, took a deep breath, "we're getting a divorce." A heavy silence dropped over the table. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. My uncle frowned. My mother gasped, "Oh my God!" while my father didn't react right away. Marcus swallowed hard and continued, this time with a steadier voice. "I know this isn't the best occasion, but with everyone here, I thought this was the right time to be honest." He reached to his right and held Kelly's hand. The entire table went still. "Kelly and we've fallen in love. We didn't want to hide it any longer. You can't control feelings. We tried to fight it, but in the end, we realized this is something we can't deny." I heard my mother gasp again. Someone muttered a curse under their breath. But all eyes quickly turned to me, expecting a rage-filled outburst, a shattered wine glass, maybe even a slap. I just gave a faint smile. "Before we go any further," I said, rising to my feet, my voice calm and almost cold, "could everyone please check your email?" Some looked confused, but one by one people pulled out their phones. I heard the sound of fingers swiping, hushed murmurs. The expressions on their faces began to shift, from shock to anger, from surprise to disgust. My mother trembled as she set her phone down, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Emma, what did you do?" Kelly whispered, her face drained of color. I took out my own phone, my expression unchanged. I just sent everyone a few files, some chat transcripts, photos, hotel receipts, and a recording from 4 months ago, when the two of you thought I was still at the office. Marcus let go of Kelly's hand, his face flushing, then quickly turning pale. "You're destroying both of our reputations. Do you realize that?" he snapped. I laughed, softly but enough to silence the room once again. "No, Marcus, you destroyed your own reputations the moment you chose to betray me, right in my own house, in front of my family." I looked at my father. He still hadn't spoken, but his hands were clenched into fists. He had always believed in harmony between his children, and now, on his birthday, he had to witness this performance. "Ha!" I took a slow breath. "Everyone here should know that what you've just seen is only the tip of the iceberg. There's much more you'll discover on your own. But at the very least, from this moment forward, no one can keep living in delusion." I pushed back my chair and stood tall. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner." And I walked out of the room without looking back. Kelly ran after me into the hallway, her rushed footsteps tearing through the tension that had been hanging heavy all evening. "Emma," she called, her voice cracked. "You can't do this. This is a private matter." I turned. "Private? You sleep with my husband and now you want to call it private?" Kelly went silent, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Under the cold hallway light, her face showed a panic I'd never seen before. I didn't wait. Walking away from the house I grew up in, I felt like I was stepping off a fake stage, one where the people who once called me family had been acting in a cheap play. And finally, I was no longer part of the cast. Back at my apartment in the Hawthorne district, I collapsed onto the sofa and kicked off the heels Marcus gave me one Christmas. The sharp ache in my soles was nothing compared to the burning in my chest. I opened my laptop and logged into the private account where I had stored every piece of evidence. A part of me wanted to delete it all, end it, walk away. But the other part, the one that had been alert and clear-headed for the past 6 months, knew this was just the beginning. I didn't catch the affair from lipstick stains or unfamiliar perfume on Marcus's shirt. No. What made me suspicious was the way he looked at Kelly during a birthday party for my best friend's son, the night they thought I was too busy babysitting in the kitchen. That night, I started noticing the little things, shifted schedules, dodged questions, glances that didn't belong. I said nothing, I gathered. The first email came from Marcus's iCloud. He'd forgot to log out on the iPad at home. A message from Kelly mentioned last night's moment and that soft touch that kept me awake. I sat for hours rereading it, wondering if I was imagining things. But then came more emails. Some had snapshots in the car, behind the house, cheap hotels 15 miles outside downtown Portland. I saved everything, placing it in a folder named Version 2, as a reminder that I needed to become a stronger version of myself to face the truth. I reached out to Lucy, an old college friend who works in IT at a financial investigation firm. She helped me pull the records from Marcus's secondary credit card. Technically a shared account, though I barely used it. In it were mystery charges, high-end spas, French restaurants, musical tickets, none of which were for me. I also extracted location data from the Tesla Model Y I had gifted Marcus for his birthday the previous year. The car logged every trip, every stop, their entire pattern. My house, to Kelly's temporary apartment, to a riverside hotel in Columbia Gorge, was all there. I built a timeline map, printed it, and pinned it to my wall like a crime scene. I didn't forget the audio recordings either. The clearest ones were from a night I pretended to go out, but had left a recording device in the bedroom. Kelly's voice whispered, "She'll never do anything. Emma lives for image, for her parents. She'll swallow it, like always." Marcus replied, "Let her swallow it, saves us the explanation." I emailed the recordings to myself, along with timestamps, locations, and doorbell cam footage of them coming and going. And that's what I sent in tonight's email. Every family member received a personalized version showing exactly how they'd been used, who had unknowingly covered for them, who had been turned into props for their art day lies. I know some people will say I was too harsh airing dirty laundry, but to me, there is no real family when they become accomplices to betrayal. I looked at the screen, where the PDFs, images, and videos were still clearly displayed. I knew what happened tonight was just the surface, but I also knew it was my calm and persistence that shattered the stage Marcus and Kelly had built. And now, I was the one holding the pen to this story. I met Marcus at a tech conference in Chicago when I was 27. He was a software engineer at a digital health startup, and I was a data analyst at a large insurance firm. We happened to sit next to each other during a panel on AI, and chuckled when the speaker confused clustering algorithms with decision trees. Marcus had a reassuring presence and an easy smile. That evening, he invited me for coffee at a corner cafe near the hotel, a moment that marked the start of many late-night conversations over the following weeks. 6 months later, he moved from Denver to Portland to be closer to me. Everything happened quickly, but it never felt rushed. When he proposed during a weekend trip to Tahoe, I said yes without a flicker of doubt. We got married on a cool spring day in my parents' backyard. Together, we built a life from scratch. Our 2-story home in Southwest Portland, a rescue dog named Benny, quiet weekends spent watching old films and cooking meals. It wasn't fairy tale perfect, but it was warm, honest, and enough to make me believe I had chosen the right man. As for Kelly, she was the kind of person who was everywhere but never really belonged anywhere. After dropping out of UC in her second year because she felt suffocated by the system, Kelly bounced between bartending, gallery assistant jobs, and even a stint as a photographer's aide. She tried everything, but nothing lasted more than a year. When Kelly returned to Portland the summer I turned 31, I was the one who reached out. Marcus was hesitant. "This might shake up the house dynamic," he said. "Remember when she bailed on cat sitting for your cousin?" I laughed. "She's my sister. Family helps family when it matters." We cleaned out the downstairs office to let Kelly stay temporarily. Just for 2 months, we thought. I still remember the first night she arrived, her hair shorter, eyes tired from the long bus ride from Santa Rosa. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in years, I felt like our family was whole again. At first, everything was fine. Kelly found a receptionist job at an art studio downtown. She came home late, but still helped with dishes, played with Benny, and even made morning coffee for both me and Marcus. Then, subtle changes crept in. Marcus, usually quiet and private, began chatting with Kelly more. I thought he was just being welcoming. But their conversations became more personal. Their eye contact lingered. One afternoon, I came home early to find them sitting closely, flipping through my wedding album, laughing like I was a stranger in those photos. I started to feel like a guest in my own home. When I confided in my mom, she told me not to overthink. Sisters bond with their brothers-in-law. It's normal, she said. I wanted to believe her. I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. But little things piled up. Kelly started taking my spot on the living room couch, ordering food only Marcus liked, making coffee exactly the way he preferred, the way I had spent 3 years learning. One evening, I returned early from a business trip. In the kitchen, I found Marcus and Kelly standing too close, laughing at something I couldn't hear. When they noticed me, they both paused. Not startled, but guilty. Marcus said, "You're home early. I was just telling Kelly about a strange case at the hospital today." I nodded. I didn't ask. But inside, a crack had formed. And I knew it wouldn't be the last. 3 months passed. Kelly still hadn't moved out. She claimed Portland's housing market was impossible. Marcus didn't argue. In fact, he started working weekend shifts more often, though his schedule had always been predictable before. I began waking up at night, lying beside someone who felt like a stranger. The same hands that once held me with tenderness now carried unfamiliar scents and silences that couldn't be explained away. The gaze that used to make me feel seen now passed through me, vacant. I couldn't pinpoint the moment Marcus and Kelly crossed the line. Maybe it was after my birthday, when I saw them whispering too long out on the balcony. Or maybe it had started long before, back when I still believed that love could withstand anything if you just tried hard enough. But I've since learned that blind trust often becomes the easiest target for betrayal. It was a late winter Friday afternoon. Snow was falling lightly over Portland, and I was working from home since my company was performing internal system maintenance. Marcus had taken my laptop in for repair a few days earlier, so I temporarily used his to finish my quarterly financial report. I turned on his laptop and entered the password, still our wedding date. Everything seemed normal until the browser automatically restored the previous session. The first thing that popped up wasn't a spreadsheet or any kind of medical document like I'd expected, but an open Gmail tab, already signed in, with a string of emails visible in the left column. I frowned. Marcus rarely used his personal email for work. That alone made me curious enough to click the top message. Subject: last night, still can't believe it happened again. From Kelly Monroe. I froze. My hands trembled as I opened the email and scanned the lines. Words filled with intimacy, private details meant only for lovers. She wrote about the way Marcus whispered in her ear, called him the only one who truly sees me. I slammed the email shut. My heart was pounding in my ears. Part of me wanted to stand up, scream, drag Marcus and Kelly in, and shatter everything. But the rational part held me still. I needed the truth. All of it. I maximized the email window and began scrolling. They hadn't deleted a thing. They were that confident. So sure they'd never be caught. These emails spanned 2 years. 2 years. I'd been living beside two betrayers for that long without knowing. One message from about 18 months ago chilled me to my core. She might be getting suspicious, but it's okay. Emma always chooses peace over drama. Marcus had replied, "As long as you're still coming tonight. I booked the Willows. You know that place has good soundproofing." I remembered that night I had a bad food reaction and was bedridden, alone. Marcus had said he was stuck in a late meeting with the hospital board. Kelly claimed she was working a late shift. They both looked me in the eye with blank, calm expressions before disappearing into a 4-star hotel downtown. I kept scrolling. Another more recent message read, "She won't sign the refinance papers. Try pitching it like a smart investment. If she signs, the house is legally yours." Marcus had responded, "I'll take care of it. Her birthday's in a few days. A good bottle of wine and a quiet dinner. She'll let her guard down." I froze, so it wasn't just some impulsive grab for the house. They had a detailed plan. They were setting financial traps, manipulating me under the disguise of concern and family. I sat there for nearly 3 hours, reading, saving, screenshotting. Each line felt like a frozen blade against my skin. But I couldn't break down. I'd worked in internal auditing for 9 years. I knew how to handle evidence, understood data protection laws, and how to keep everything admissible and procedural. Transferred everything to an external drive, then backed it up to an encrypted cloud platform with 2-factor authentication. I sat upright, closed the laptop, and opened my notebook, listing each detail: date, time, event, quote, related transaction. I began rebuilding the full timeline from scratch. The next day, I went to see the therapist I'd met after my miscarriage last year. A loss Marcus barely acknowledged. I told her everything. She didn't tell me what to do. She simply asked, "Emma, there are people who forgive, and there are people who define boundaries. The question is, who do you want to be in this story?" I didn't answer out loud, but I knew the truth deep in my chest. This time, I would not choose silence. Marcus and Kelly had left behind enough breadcrumbs for me to trace, but they forgot that the woman they thought was weak, soft, and naive was the one holding the entire map to their reckoning. And that reckoning was getting closer by the minute. Ever since discovering that inbox full of betrayal, I was no longer Emma, the devoted wife or the forgiving sister. I entered a completely different state. Clear-headed, silent, and unnervingly precise. I became someone Marcus never anticipated, a relentless investigator, quietly reconstructing every layer of the affair he and Kelly had spent 2 years trying to conceal. I started by placing a compact GPS tracker inside Marcus's Tesla. It was a birthday gift I had once been proud to give him, and now it became the tool that would lead me back to the truth. The tracker connected to the car's OBDII port beneath the steering wheel. Discreet, undetectable. I synced it with my phone and work laptop. From that point on, every move Marcus made was in the palm of my hand. 3 days later, I saw him stop at a roadside inn just outside Vancouver, Washington. Not far from downtown, but far enough to avoid familiar faces. Along with the GPS pin, I captured screenshots of check-in and check-out times and the electronic receipt from our shared credit card. He'd forgotten to unlink it from the account. I didn't stop with Marcus's movements. One evening, Kelly left her phone unattended in the kitchen while showering. I connected it to my computer and backed up her data using forensic software I had used during my time as an internal auditor. I recovered hundreds of iMessages and WhatsApp threads, images, videos, everything she thought she had deleted. One exchange kept me awake all night. "Kelly, she still thinks we're just friends. So sad." "Marcus, doesn't matter. as long as she never finds out about the audio clip from when you accidentally played music in the living room. Good thing I cut the security cam feed. I immediately checked the home camera system, something I had installed myself after Marcus suggested beefing up security in case of burglaries. I found 3 clips had been deleted or trimmed. The disgust in my throat was visceral. They had manipulated not only my trust, but my sense of safety, emotionally, technologically, and personally. I backed up everything and sent it to a hidden email vault. Each photo was time-stamped, geolocated, and labeled clearly. Then 14, Marcus told me he had a business trip in Bend. GPS shows he was at an Airbnb near Cannon Beach with Kelly. I also found a recurring event in Marcus's email, meeting with consultant, scheduled every Wednesday afternoon. Suspicious, I reached out to an old friend in the city's transportation department. Using traffic camera snapshots, we pinpointed Marcus exiting a small bakery, hand in hand with Kelly. The photo was grainy, but their faces were unmistakable, grinning like they existed in a world without consequence. I didn't stop at texts or pictures. I began tracking suspicious financial activity, transfers, duplicate charges, flower deliveries, concert tickets. One transaction nearly knocked the wind out of me. Marcus had bought a white gold bracelet from a luxury jeweler in Pearl District just 2 weeks after my birthday. That year, he had told me he didn't have the budget for a gift. I recognized that bracelet in a story Kelly posted months ago, buried in her art gallery vibes highlight. Her wrist flashed briefly, but the iconic Cartier charm sparkled unmistakably. I took a screenshot, matched it with the receipt, and saved it in a folder labeled cross-reference evidence. Every night after Marcus drifted off to sleep, I opened my laptop and updated the data. Organizing, matching, documenting. I recorded his words, his expressions, the small behavioral glitches I once ignored. The full picture emerged slowly but clearly. 2 betrayers orbiting around a woman they deemed too mild, too trusting to notice. I began laying out my plan. Every step they took, I now controlled. Every crack they created, I turned into leverage. No rage, no bitterness. Just one focused mission to fight back with facts, undeniable, chronological, documented truth. When the time came, I knew I wouldn't need to scream to be believed. I would simply present the evidence, and the truth would do all the talking. I knew I couldn't tear down an entire web of lies with just emotion. If I wanted to expose Marcus and Kelly, I had to prepare like I was walking into a courtroom. And honestly, I didn't rule out that possibility. 3 weeks after compiling the digital files, I scheduled a meeting with Diana Scott, a sharp-minded divorce and asset dispute attorney recommended by my best friend Linda. Diana's office was tucked inside a historic red brick building in Portland's Pearl District, overlooking Jamieson Square Park. She had handled dozens of high-stakes divorce cases involving financial deceit, and most importantly, she was ruthlessly practical. I walked in with a hard drive, a thick binder of printed evidence, and a mindset ready to face whatever ugly truths might come. After over 2 hours of reviewing everything, Deanna looked up and tapped the stack of papers in front of her. Emma, I've had clients come in here with tears and rage. You walked in with a timeline and bank statements. That's impressive. I nodded. I don't want to lose just because I wasn't prepared. She continued, legally speaking, Oregon is an equitable distribution state. Infidelity doesn't automatically affect asset division, but if you can prove Marcus intentionally concealed or shifted assets, especially to Kelly, the court will take that very seriously. I slid over another document packet, 3 wire transfers Marcus made from our joint savings to a separate account I'd only recently discovered. Each transfer was about $4,000, 0 cents, labeled as urgent investment advice. Deanna gave a cold smile. Nothing screams urgent advice like a pair of Christian Louboutin heels for your mistress. She recommended I hire a private investigator to strengthen the case, especially for collecting testimonies from hotel staff, security footage, and tracking suspicious spending tied to Kelly. I agreed immediately. A week later, I met Maxwell Carter, a former financial crimes investigator turned private eye. He was tall, composed, and had a way of asking questions that made me feel like I was being interrogated by the FBI. But that seriousness made me trust him. I don't need you to follow them anymore, I said. I need third-party confirmation, something that will hold up in court, and in the court of public opinion if necessary. Maxwell got to work fast. Within a week, he sent me footage of Marcus and Kelly entering a short-term rental in Vancouver, registered under a newly formed shell company. The legal representative? Jason. Marcus's best friend, whom I'd hosted for dinner at least 10 times. Maxwell had rented the unit directly across the hall and set up a hallway camera. On 4 separate visits, Marcus and Kelly arrived with overnight bags, wine, and takeout. This clearly wasn't a work break hideaway. I carefully compiled everything. GPS coordinates, rental receipts, bank transfers tied to that second apartment, and texts where they spoke about building a new life after the divorce. I began sorting the files by recipient. One for Diana, with all the legally admissible evidence. One for my parents, with a letter explaining that I didn't need them to choose sides, just to understand the truth. And one batch remained unsent, for now, but it would reach every one of Marcus and Kelly's relatives when the time was right. I wasn't just out to reveal the affair. I wanted both families to know. I wasn't blind, I wasn't naive, and I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. I was once a woman who gave her full trust to her husband and sister. And they built a parasitic relationship on top of that goodwill. Marcus might lose the house? Possibly. Kelly might lose her reputation? Definitely. I scheduled the emails. Each was personalized. To Marcus's parents, I attached a clip of them referring to Kelly as practically family, alongside evidence of the hidden rental apartment. To my cousin, the one who said I should forgive Marcus if it was a one-time slip. I attached a timeline chart showing this slip lasted 25 months and took place in 19 different locations. I even restored an audio file from a Zoom call Marcus thought he had deleted thanks to CloudSync. In it, he referred to Kelly as his long-term solution. Everything was queued and ready to send. And my mother's birthday party? The one where Kelly planned to finally hold his hand in front of everyone, as she wrote in a message? I smiled coldly. They had no idea that in the exact moment they thought they held the power, I was already reaching for the switch. Birthday dinner number 70 for my father, Mr. Donald Miller, was held at a cozy Italian restaurant on the west side of Portland. It was the kind of place our family always chose for special occasions. Warm golden lighting, a soft violin playing from the corner, and plates of antipasto served like a sacred ritual. I arrived early, carrying a chocolate cake I baked myself and a small gift box containing a collector's book on vintage aircrafts, something my father had been hunting for at trade fairs. I wore a deep plum-colored dress, simple yet elegant, along with the pearl earrings my mother once wore on her wedding day. Marcus and Kelly had arrived before me. They were sitting together at the head of the table, where my parents usually sat. No one said a word, but I caught a few puzzled glances exchanged between relatives. I wasn't surprised. They had already begun testing the waters as a new couple, under the guise of staying close as former in-laws. Dinner carried on with a strange stiffness. Everyone tried to keep conversation light, weather, baseball, summer plans, but it was clear something was brewing beneath the surface. I checked my watch. 7:58 p.m. According to plan, the email containing all of my evidence, photos, messages, bank statements, investigator footage, was scheduled to hit every inbox at exactly 8:00 p.m., each one personalized, with a polite introduction and the most relevant snippet for the recipient. All I had to do was wait another minute. 8:00 p.m. I heard phones buzzing and pinging around the table. My heart sped up. Not from anxiety, but anticipation. And then, another ping. from my mail service. Email delivery failed. Temporary server issue. Please retry later. I froze for half a second. My eyes blinked rapidly. I tried resending, but the system was down. A minor glitch, but just enough to sabotage months of meticulous planning. While I scrambled to fix it, Marcus stood up. He tapped his wine glass gently, producing that familiar, irritating chime. Everyone, if I could have a few minutes, Marcus began, calm and confident. All eyes turned to him, even mine. I was the only one who knew exactly what was coming. First of all, happy birthday, Donald. You've been an incredible father and a teacher of patience and kindness, he said, glancing at Kelly. But tonight, aside from celebrating your birthday, I want to share something personal, he continued, pausing for dramatic effect. Emma and I have decided to end our marriage. It's not anyone's fault. We've grown apart, and that's created distance. Kelly lowered her head, feigning emotion. And during this transition, something new happened. Something I can't deny. Kelly and I were in love. Silence blanketed the room. My mother raised a trembling hand to her mouth. My father furrowed his brows, clearly trying to process what he'd just heard. I stood up. Their story was just beginning, but mine was about to take over. I reached into my purse and pulled out my laptop, the one I always carried as part of my contingency plan. I connected to my mobile hotspot and opened the backup email system I had set up a week ago for precisely this kind of failure. I drafted a new email and attached the entire zip file. Photos, videos, message transcripts, GPS logs, and bank transfers Marcus made to Kelly via a proxy account. Subject line, the truth behind Marcus's confession. Recipients, every close family member and friend. I hit send. 10 seconds later, the room erupted in a chorus of alerts. Buzzes and dings from phones all around the table. People looked down. I said nothing, just stood still. Eyes fixed on Marcus and Kelly, their faces now draining of color, like masks slowly being peeled off. My father was the first to open the email. He scrolled through the photos, then turned to Marcus, his face flushed. You were in a hotel room with your sister-in-law while still cashing the checks I sent you to fix the damn roof? Kelly whispered, No, how did you? I responded, cool and steady, because I was never as naive as you both thought. The fake smiles crumbled. Relatives started murmuring. Some shook their heads. A few stood up and left. A birthday party that should have been filled with cake and laughter was now drenched in fury and shame. Marcus tried to speak, but I cut him off. Save it. Everything is in the files now. I turned to my father. I'm sorry this ruined your party, but I thought, if there was any place to strip away the lies, it should be here. I pulled out my chair, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind thick silence, ruined faces, and a family shattered by a truth no one could deny. The silence in the restaurant was shattered, not by clinking silverware or background music, but by the relentless dinging of phones across the dinner table. Each alert struck like a blow to Marcus and Kelly's carefully worn masks. One by one, unrelenting and brutal. My Uncle Peter was the first to open his email. His face drained of color as he reached the part where Kelly mocked me. She's too dense to realize she's been cheated on for 2 years. Oh my God, he muttered. My cousin Rachel set down her wine glass, hands trembling. She stared at Marcus like he was a stranger. You texted Kelly about tricking Emma into signing over the house on her birthday? You called the woman who took care of your mother during cancer an obstacle? Marcus opened his mouth as if to object, but then Aunt Thartha's phone buzzed loudly. I'm watching a video right now of Marcus with his arm around Kelly in a hotel parking lot, she said, her voice shaking. Wearing a red dress, right? Kelly had been trying to squeeze out a few tears, but when my mother Linda turned toward her, her eyes were unflinching. Kelly, you called me Mom. I trusted you, I once said. I hope she finds a man like Marcus. And you? You slept with your sister's husband. The question landed like a slap without sound. Kelly whimpered. I didn't think it would go this far. I turned back to her, calm. Then why did your email say if she finds out around the holidays, the emotional impact will be stronger? No one spoke. The fake warmth from earlier had turned into a stifling atmosphere of disgust. They weren't some tragic lovers from a TV drama anymore. They were betrayers. Of love, of decency, of family. Marcus sat frozen, likely calculating damage control, but there was no exit strategy now. My father slowly folded his napkin and stood. He walked to me and placed his hand on my shoulder, gentle, steady. You didn't ruin anything, Emma. You just returned this room to the truth. For the first time in months, my heart beat steadily. I think I'll go now, I said softly. My voice didn't tremble. I wasn't angry. I'm sorry for choosing tonight, Dad. But if not here, in front of the people who once loved them, then it would have meant nothing. He nodded, eyes misting. You did the right thing, the absolutely right thing. I turned and walked away from the table. As I passed Marcus, he murmured, Bye, I didn't mean to hurt you. I stopped. I looked him straight in the eye. The man I once thought was my safe place, now just a warped shadow. Hurt isn't something you do by accident, Marcus. You design it. I moved on. Behind me, Kelly collapsed into her chair, face buried in her hands, but no one moved to comfort her. Eyes that once saw her as family now stared with cold judgment and quiet finality. Before I stepped out the door, I looked back at my family, my friends, the blood ties who had witnessed my quiet unraveling and now watched me rise. I bowed my head slightly. Thank you for reading it all. I left the restaurant to the sound of exhaled shock and stunned silence. No one called out. No one asked me to stay. Because nothing more needed to be said. The truth had already spoken. As the door closed behind me, the Portland night air hit my face, cold, crisp, but I felt strangely light. For the first time in a long time, my shoulders weren't carrying secrets anymore. The next morning, I walked into the Multnomah County Courthouse in my Navy Blue work suit, holding a complete case file that Diana, my attorney, had prepared. When the clerk at the intake desk asked, Are you sure you want to file for divorce today? I looked her straight in the eye and replied with a small smile. Never been more sure. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel lost. What I felt strangely and clearly was this. I was choosing myself. Marcus received the court summons 2 days later. Diana told me he didn't respond with rage or drama, just a cold, doctor-style email. I accept this decision. I hope we can settle this peacefully. I never wrote back. The next 3 weeks were a quiet but firm reclamation of what was rightfully mine. The house in my name, the retirement fund I contributed 80% to, and the joint savings from which Marcus secretly withdrew nearly $15,000 for a surprise vacation in Hawaii for Kelly. All recovered, backed by the very evidence I filed with the divorce petition. As for Kelly, she disappeared from social media within days of the dinner. No public statements, no apologies. My family never mentioned her again, like a blot of ink that had once smeared a white sheet, now washed away. 3 months later, on a crisp Thursday morning in late fall, I walked into Diana's office for the last time to sign the final divorce papers. Diana handed me the pen with a short but profound send-off. Congratulations, Emma. This isn't an ending. It's the sound of something beginning. I signed. And when I walked out of that room, I carried nothing but my purse and a quiet smile. That night, I sat in my new apartment, a 2-bedroom on the 9th floor overlooking the Willamette River. The kitchen was cozy. The floors were pale oak. The balcony fit 2 chairs and a tiny tea table. Nothing excessive, nothing missing. I moved in alone, without help, without fanfare, but for the first time, I didn't feel small anymore. I opened my laptop and accessed the folder titled Blackbox_Marcus, the one that held every piece of evidence from the past 5 months. Messages, photos, videos, audio files, location logs, receipts, each labeled, each sorted. I right-clicked, delete, confirm, gone. Then I logged into the anonymous Gmail account I had used to distribute the files that night and hit delete account. The system asked, "Are you sure you want to permanently delete all data?" I typed, "Yes, success." And just like that, it was done. I stood and stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, the river drifting silently beneath the bridges, time itself flowing soft but strong. I held my warm mug of tea, and for the first time in over a year, I took a deep breath without feeling like my chest was anchored in stone. I was no longer the betrayed woman, no longer the deceived wife, no longer the wounded sister. I was simply me, Emma Miller, 35, living solo in a beautiful apartment with a solid career, a heart that had learned to protect itself, and a future I would now write with clarity and courage. I knew there would be lonely nights. I would miss the weight of someone beside me on the couch watching movies. But I also knew no loneliness is worse than lying next to someone who no longer tells you the truth. I had walked through deception. I had stood firm through the apathy of people I once called family, and I was still here, whole. One day, if someone ever asked me, "Emma, if you could go back, would you do it all over again?" I would answer, "No, I'd do it sooner." Emma's story proves that betrayal does not define us. How we confront it does. When the deepest wounds come from those closest to us, choosing truth over silence is an act of courage. Emma didn't just reclaim justice. She showed that women can rise, rewrite their own lives, not with hatred, but with wisdom, resilience, and self-respect. Sometimes, a new beginning starts the moment we dare to say, enough. What do you think about Emma's journey? If it were you, would you choose to forgive or walk away like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, emotional stories about family and life.